Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J Loren Norris.
Some of the most frustrating words I have ever heard came to me in the form of a question. Do you know who I am? Do you know who I work for? And my inability to answer that question could have been the difference between a career and no career. And that's what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders.
For access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at StoryPowerAcademy.com for leadership development and communication skills training. Subscribe.
I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, and I don't know if you've ever had that moment where you realize that your next 30 minutes, 30 months, 30 years in this job hang in the balance of your ability to know the answer to the question, do you know who I am? It's amazing to me how many times I've run across people who are so thoroughly convinced that because of their job title, because of their boss, because of who their father or their mother is, because of their lineage, that everything in the world is going to go their way. Now, I understand you've got to have that kind of moxie. You've got to have that kind of belief in yourself that the world is going to work the way I want it to work, or you're going to give up on life. You're going to be telling yourself stories that will destroy you. I know, because I spent my life telling myself stories that I heard from my mom. The rich get rich, the poor go broke, it's the rich's fault. Who in the world wants to be rich? I've spent most of my life with that kind of head trash trying to get past those stories. I made a lot of mistakes when I was a kid. Growing up with an addiction from the time I was 10 years old, yeah, I made a lot of mistakes. I did a lot of really stupid stuff. Some of those things have internal, mental, emotional consequences, and that's the end of it. They hamstring my potential because I'm telling myself a story that perhaps no one else has ever heard. Now, those don't necessarily limit my skills. They don't necessarily inhibit my IQ, my ability to learn, my ability to perform. In fact, when you run those two things into each other, that internal story that's negative and destructive, and the external capability, you get this thing that it's a very common, trendy phrase right now. It's called imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is the result of having an incredible skill set and not believing in yourself at the same time. Now, that's different than the person who says, do you know who I am? Do you know who I work for? Because see, they've got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, and they feel like not only are they impervious to that internal thought process that causes them to check up a little bit and maybe lean back when they should have leaned in, and bob left when they should have bobbed right. Instead, it gives them this resilience that sometimes is an unearned but deeply held belief that they are invincible. And when you feel like that, you think certain thoughts about other people. When you feel like nothing that I could do could actually destroy me, then you treat other people with disdain. You do. Been watching a TV series that's from a few years back. I think we're in the 4th season now. But there's a scene where, there's several scenes where the confrontation with a teenage girl ends in her going, "Do you know who my dad is?" And people are like, "Oh, you're that one." And then a new guy comes to town and he encounters her and he puts her in handcuffs and he puts her in jail. And she's like, "Do you know who my dad is?" And he's like, "Nope, and I don't care. What you did was against the law, and I'm going to put you in jail for it." And the horror on her face, the revelation that there's going to be a day when you go, "Do you know who I am? Do you know who I work for? Do you know who my parents are?" isn't enough to get you out of trouble. It's not enough to overwhelm the attitude that you brought to this moment, the attitude that led you to make decisions, the attitude that caused you to behave in a way that's detrimental to your future. Now, when you have sabotaged your own future because you're thoroughly convinced, no matter how wrong I am, no matter what I do, this covering of who I am and whose I am, that's plenty. I'm good. I can do whatever. I mean, we've seen it in every level of politics and sports. We've seen it at every level of business. I'd be willing to, if I was a betting man, I'd be willing to bet you've worked alongside someone who is thoroughly convinced, "I'm not going to get fired. I'm not going to get written up. I'm not going to lose my job. I'm not going to get demoted. In fact, if they say anything to me, they'll be like, 'Shh, don't do that where everybody can see it.'" That's probably going to be the worst thing that happens because of who I am. I mean, my parents owned the company. I mean, my dad built this thing from the ground up. I mean, my dad holds XYZ political office, and nobody would do that. It's the whole thing about PKs, preachers' kids. They're usually the worst ones in the church because they feel like they have some sense that I can do whatever I want to. Unless you're going to fire my dad tomorrow, he's still going to be the big guy on campus. School teachers, their kids have the same problem. Bosses who run a company and they hire their employees, if they didn't raise them with great integrity from the beginning, they're going to have the same kind of problem. See, this is what happens when you hire somebody because they're in the family, but you haven't taught them to have the right kind of attitude. It's also what happens in an organization, whether it's a high-level sports team or it's a high-level sales team or it's a very small organization. When someone comes along with impressive skills and you're like, you know, if we can get that person to bring their skill to bear on our project, man, we are going to nail this. And I know organizations, I've been a part of organizations that brought someone in strictly based on their reputation. Not even their performance, just their reputation. If we get this big name to be a part of what we're doing, everybody in the world will believe that we have arrived, that we as an organization, as a company, as a product, as a service, we have nailed it. If I could say that person was my client or this person is on my team, I got this made. I got it in the bag. And that level of undue confidence, unearned qualification, it kind of feeds the same attitude. There's two attitudes that I want to talk to you about today. We've been in this series talking about attitude and how it shows up first in little phrases. Little phrases like, do you know who my boss is, my friends are, my parents? Do you know who I work for? Do you know who I am? Those little phrases, they tend to pop up when a couple of these attitudes are present. And those little phrases, it is what it is. I'll do the work when you pay me well enough. If I was in charge, that's not in my job description. All these little phrases, they seem, well, as a boss, as a leader, as the owner, founder of an organization, they're very frustrating because you realize that someone has taken on themselves some haughtiness that isn't going to do your organization well. And if they have that kind of attitude, that kind of phraseology when facing the customer, that's not going to be good for your organization at all. Now, I understand you got to have confidence. And I understand that you've got to build yourself up. You've got to believe in yourself. And you've got to perform to the standard of what you believe. And those two, like I said, when you got a great skill set and a horrible attitude, you probably have an imposter syndrome. When you don't believe about yourself what you're really capable of, you're going to self-sabotage. I know, I did it for a long time. But I also know that when you have more confidence than you have capability, do a little research on the Dunning-Kruger effect. It'll mess with your head a little bit. But when you believe about yourself what you're not capable of, you have a different kind of attitude problem. But when someone has always fed you that you're bulletproof, you're invincible, you're not going to get fired, you can march through anything that you've done wrong, all the way up to and including criminal behavior, Enron. Right now, we've got the DOJ plowing into people all over the country about fraud, waste, and abuse. And it's at every level, in every community, and a lot of it's government money, meaning my money and your money, that's been absconded with, some of it redistributed around the world, and some of it's used for nefarious purposes. There was an organization in the last 5 years that raised a whole lot of money to fight auspiciously a just cause. And it turned out within about 18 months, almost $11 million of the money that they raised to fight this just cause really bought 3 houses. All right, not houses to get the work done, just houses for the people in charge. Because they recognize the pattern. I can gather all the money, I can do this, and because of the way I believe, do you know who I am? Do you know who I work for? Seeped into their own level of confidence that I'm untouchable because I believe this certain thing, because I belong to this certain community. You can't do anything about it. I mean, maybe you could, but you wouldn't. See, when that kind of attitude drives the behavior of the people on your team and your organization, in you have a real problem. But often we look at people and we hire for their aptitude, their skill set, what their name brings to the table. We get people on board for a movie project or a new business launch, or we want to build this enormous thing, and we need people with money, and we need people with name ID, and we need people who, when they say I'm part of that project, other people are going to want to gather around. And we forget that often the poison seed isn't in what you know about them, it's in the who that they are. It's the attitude. It's the way they communicate with others. It's the way they treat people around them. It's what they believe about themselves, true or not. The attitude. So the 2 attitudes that I want to point out today, these are the last of the 2 negative attitudes. The next couple of days, we're going to deal with positive attitudes and break them down a little bit. And then maybe I'll take one of these attitudes and go really deep into it. Maybe one negative, one positive, go really deep into it and talk about it. But let me give you a high-level overview of 2 attitudes: arrogance and complacency. And at first blush, you might think, well, those don't really have anything to do with each other. Let me remind you, the 5 that I've chosen to highlight: resignation, blame, entitlement, arrogance, and complacency. They're all directly related. They all kind of come together to accomplish one thing, and that is sabotage your business, your work environment, your culture, and eventually your brand. Remember, your brand is what other people say about you when you walk out of the room. If they have an experience with your team and they think of your team, wow, all those people are arrogant. All of those people don't take responsibility. They put it on me as the client. If you've had any kind of encounter where something went wrong and the service provider blamed you as the customer for the thing that went wrong when it was really their fault, you don't want to deal with that brand again. It doesn't matter what the brand is. It doesn't matter what service they provided. If you're carrying the blame because they don't take responsibility, that's a problem. But if the employees are entitled, like I mentioned yesterday about a particular hospital that I deal with, if their employees are extremely entitled and they feel like you as the patient don't deserve anything other than to do exactly what they tell you to, right, wrong, or otherwise, and that simply calling and saying I didn't get what I was supposed to get is an inconvenience to them, that level of entitlement seeps out into every other relationship. It's not just the people that they work around. It's the people they serve, which then becomes your brand reputation. So these 5 negative attitudes, oh yeah, they're toxic and destructive in the workplace. But they don't stay there. They move beyond that. So there's kind of one key phrase that, and you see this in sports teams, you see this in cheerleading teams, you see this on debate teams, chess teams. Anytime there's a team, if there's one superstar, one high performer, one greatest salesperson in the organization, one founder who kind of came up with the idea that now everybody else is having to execute, you're going to hear a phrase like this, and it sounds something like, if it weren't for me, this team would get nothing done. If it weren't for me, we wouldn't win. Now, they're easy to spot on the basketball court. On the basketball court, they're called a ball hog. They commit every steal that they can against the opposing team. That's great. That's good defense. But then when they get the ball in their hand, they refuse to pass, and they take every shot. And generally speaking, they're good shooters. They can hit from wherever they shoot. And so when the ball is in their hand, your propensity for scoring goes up. In fact, you see some of the superstars, and they carry 60, 70% of the points of the game. Well, that's pretty impressive, and that does well. But here's the negative side of that same thing. When their level of arrogance gets so out of control that they take it on themselves and they truly believe nobody else is contributing to this. It's all on me. Not only is that destructive for themselves, eventually they're going to burn out, they're going to destroy themselves, they're going to get hurt, whatever it is. And when they do, the team has learned so much to depend on them that nobody else is even competent to cover the gap. When they go down, when they get sick, when they take a week off, when they go on vacation, when they leave to get married, when they transition to another role, the team falls apart because they've so counted on this one person, because their arrogance said, you can't do this without me, so stay out of my way and let me do it. And in the process, you haven't built a team capable and competent without them. So what happens? The attitude of arrogance sounds like, you can't even do this without me. You'd be nothing without me. The impact that it brings is self-promotion at team expense. Now again, if you've been in an environment where you've got a really arrogant person on your team, yes, they're probably competent. Yes, their aptitude is off the charts. Their skill set, their ability to get it done, to make the shot, to close the sale, to get the merger accomplished, to write the exact right words for the marketing piece. Awesome. They're really good at that. But their self-promotion at team expense never ends. Everything that happens, even those things that they honestly have to go, well, you know, you did contribute a little bit. I mean, I started it. It was my idea. I added the bulk of the capability to it, but, you know, everybody else kind of pitched in. Even when that's true, self-promotion will destroy the team, because that one individual, that arrogant individual, feels like, tells the world, behaves as if the rest of the team is nothing. Generally speaking, that kind of arrogance will speak in demeaning ways, will destroy other people's ego, their confidence, and when those things begin to go, you end up with that gap again. They may have the skill, but they don't have the belief in themselves. And now not only are they operating with an imposter syndrome, but they will not try to up-level their skills because they don't believe they can, because the arrogant team member has told them, why don't you just let me do it because I'm going to do it better anyway. I'm not going to pass the ball because every time I pass to you, you miss. I haven't missed a shot all game. I'm going to keep handling the ball. You have seen it even in the NFL. Wide receivers that every play, if the ball's not thrown in their direction, they get a miff. They want to scream. They want to yell. They want to yell at the coaches, yell at the quarterback, yell at their defending opponents. They just get an attitude of arrogance on display because they're thoroughly convinced I'm the best. And if you just threw the ball anywhere in my zip code, I'm going to catch it and I'm going to score. And here's the real irony. Their attitude sometimes raises up so high, they're untenable in the entire team, and it begins to affect their competence. How many times have you seen somebody say, if you throw the ball in my zip code, I'm catching it, I'm going to the house, and then they drop the next 4 passes? And sometimes you hear somebody on the team say, look at me, I'm making my numbers every single time. I've never missed a sale. There's not a sale out there I can't close. And then the next 3 sales cycles, they're behind on their budget because their arrogance caused them to believe something that wasn't true. They're not going to fire me. Look at my numbers. They're not going to fire me. Look who my boss is. They're not going to fire me. I got family in the business. And if they fire me, I'm just going to another company, and the other company is going to win. And that level of arrogance pushes them somewhere else. They're confident to a fault. That's another level of impact when you have an attitude of arrogance. How about this one? The constant false comparison. An attitude of arrogance brings a constant false comparison. They will set themselves up in a paper tiger kind of a way. You can't defeat me. Look how good I am. And sometimes they believe that about themselves because they're not willing to acknowledge that everything they've done required input from the entire team. If someone else wasn't handling their paperwork, there's no chance. If somebody else wasn't defending for them, they'd have never made that shot. If somebody else hadn't put that screen or that pick, there's no chance they would have got away with that. But they're not willing to see that. And so this constant false comparison that, look what I've done. My numbers speak for themselves. My results speak for themselves. And the truth is, they're convinced that they did it all by themselves, that if everybody else just quit. I remember hearing Deion Sanders one time say, a reporter asked him, female reporter, she said, when you intercept the ball on a pass, when you're playing that cornerback and the ball comes and you pick that ball, where would you prefer your defensive lineman to go? Do you want them to build a wedge to the right, build a wedge to the left, create a wall down the center? What do you want them to do? He goes, lay down. And she's like, that's silly. He said, no, there's absolutely no one on that field who can run fast enough to catch me. If there is, they're going the other way because they don't realize I have their ball. That wide receiver, probably the only person on the field close enough to speed to catch me. So my other 10 players on my team, they're just obstacles where I can't see the enemy. If they just lay down right where they're at, I can run around everybody else on the team and go to the end zone. Okay, you might call that arrogance. Now, I'm not saying it's not true that he didn't have the speed and the agility to do that. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that's a high level of arrogance that says I don't need anybody else on the team. When I have the ball in my hand, you could all go sit on the bench and I'll outrun the other 11 guys. That's not a team sport. That's a show-off. Was he that good? Yeah. Until he got turf toe. And then all of his fame and all of his fortune and all of his skill went out the window over the equivalent of a blister. How the mighty have fallen. Lastly, I want to talk about complacency. Complacency is a challenge. Complacency is a challenge because it comes often in a grand disguise. If you look up complacency in the dictionary, you're going to find a very interesting turn of phrase. Many of us have been told, wherever you're at, be content. Know that you're doing your part, you're contributing, you're moving forward, you're adding to the bottom line, you're bringing value, and be content there. Don't be so ambitious that you're always trying to yank somebody else off their pedestal to take their place. But if you look up the dictionary definition of complacency, in many dictionaries you're going to find this phrase, content to a fault. Meaning, you're so comfortable right where you are, you're not really looking to improve. You're not looking to improve yourself. You're not looking to improve your game. You're not looking to up your skills. You're not operating in that level of self-awareness that says, what could I be doing better? Could I be treating my coworkers better? Could I be treating my family better? Could I be treating the other people around me, my consumer, my clients? Could I be treating them better? Could I be doing something for them that I'm not currently doing? What could I be doing better? Could I be a better salesperson? Could I be making more closes? Could I be making more calls? Could I be just putting in more effort and less time doom scrolling? But when you're content where you are, Eventually, there's a place where contentment goes from, I'm going to take a break, to I'm a couch potato. That's a challenge. It sounds like, what are they going to do? Fire me? I do my job. I keep my nose clean. I stay out of the way. Now, being content in your job and not always fighting to find another job, find another promotion. We're in a different place now. There was a book in 2000 by Tom Peters, and it was called Top 50 something. I'll find the book and I'll show it to you in the next episode. But his basic premise was this: the idea of job security is a myth. So, don't fight for job security, fight for employment security. And here's what he was pointing out. My parents' generation got a job, stayed in that job 30 years, retired from that job, put their feet up. 20 years if you're in the military, and in some big industries, 20 years is enough. But for most people, they would work 30 years, the house be paid off, cars be paid off, kids go to college, and they retire, and they're done. And it was really easy when you got into that job and you had your pension and you had your retirement and you had your health benefits and you knew you were going to get Social Security plus your other health benefits from work. It was really easy to get into that content spot or complacency and feel like, if I just don't get fired, if I just do what it takes to keep my job, I keep my mouth shut, I stay out of the way, I stay out of the spotlight, I'm not ambitious, I just do my job, I do my job well, and I stay out of the way. I will make my 30 years, I'll get my pension, I'll get my health benefits, I'll get my retirement, and I'm done. But the evolution of the marketplace brought us to a place where people would work 18 years. They'd be getting all these raises for 18 years. They'd get these new positions for 18 years. And at just before that 20-year mark, when it was time for them to retire and get their pension, the company would let them go and fire somebody, or hire somebody younger and cheaper. And if they came with a college degree and took half the pay, why would I not do that as a company? And so what we realized was this 30 years, this 20 years of company loyalty, meaning as an employee, I'm giving everything that I've got. I'm doing my job. I'm showing up on time. I'm never late. I don't call out sick. I'm doing my role as an employee. And now the company's going to replace me with a goldfish because it's cheaper. It's more profitable. At the turn of the century, that was the reason that workers' unions were so prolific and so powerful, because they defended the worker who said, I put in all this time and you're just going to replace me because it's cheaper. That's not fair. And so when Tom Brand You 50, that's the name of the book, Brand You 50. It's the name of the book by Tom Peters around 1999, 2000. And the purpose of the book was to say, you're not going to have 30 years of job security. That train has left the station, that boat has sailed, that plane is gone. But you're going to be valuable in the job you're in now, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, if you constantly improve yourself. If you know what you're capable of, you've built your belief in yourself and you've built your aptitude at the same time. As long as those two things are continuing to build, even if this company goes away, you have job security, because you're not looking at the job you're in, you're looking at your ability and your value to be employed. So forget job security, look for employment security. The attitude of complacency doesn't mix well with that concept or that evolution in society that says that jobs don't last 30 years any more than a Chevy truck does. You might have a job 2 to 6, maybe 10 years. My longest range of employment was 10 years at one company. And even then, I was there as an employee, I was there as a contractor, I was out, I was back as a contractor, and then back as an employee before the final dismissal. And when I was dismissed, I was one of the last people to get a severance package and COBRA and all that stuff. And over the next, 8 months, they laid off over 2,000 people. I was the last round that got a full severance package and health benefits and all that kind of stuff. There's no loyalty from companies anymore. If you didn't build it, if you didn't found it, the odds that you're going to be there 25, 30 years, pretty slim. Which means your 401k's got to follow you. Your investments have to be built outside of that. Your stock options even. A lot of people offer them, but if you're not in the C-suite, the company goes over a company sells, your options are gone too. What happens with complacency? That contentment to a fault leads to disengaged. It leads to disconnected. It leads to quiet quitting. When somebody has reached that place of complacency, one of two things happens. They feel like, I'm a piece of furniture, I'm going to be here forever, and so I just keep doing my thing. I'm not engaged in making the company better. I'm not engaged in the next level of profit. And that partnered with entitlement often sounds like, well, you can't fire me anyway. I've been here for 22 years. There was a movie that came out, I don't remember the name of the movie. It was around 2004, 2005, where a guy got fired from the job and he kept coming to work anyway. And they're like, dude, you know we're not paying you anymore. And he's like, yeah. Why do you keep showing up? Where else am I going to go? That was a challenge. That was a challenge for him and the company. They finally had to escort him out with security. But for months, he just kept coming to work. They're like, you don't even work here anymore. He's like, I know, but I don't have anything else to do with myself. That's a bit of a problem. If you hire for aptitude, you might get great aptitude, great skill, great talent, great ability, great performance, great track record, great resume, and a whole lot of arrogance. If you hire for aptitude only, you might get someone who can get in the job and they're the best mediocre, average, never going to get better, never going to get worse kind of employee that you'll ever have. They're just steady, like the old fullback. He's going to get 3 yards every time. If you need 2.5 yards, he's going to get 3 yards. If you need 3 yards, he's going to get 3 yards. If you need 9 yards, he's going to get 3 yards. He's consistent, but he's complacent. That's a problem. If you hire for aptitude and you don't pay attention to attitude, you're going to have a problem in your organization, which is going to affect your culture, which is going to affect your brand, which is going to affect your ability to stay in business and build your business. My challenge to you as a leader, you've got to learn to identify these attitudes, to deconstruct them, and to reconstruct them. If you go to the website, go to Attitude Hack, you're going to find this little QR code at the end of this video, and you can jump in there and get the free attitude check download and an idea of what the 5 most prominent negative and most prominent positive attitudes are. I highly encourage you to do that. Jump on to StoryPowerAcademy.com and learn about the Attitude Hack. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at StoryPowerAcademy.com.